Right now in Austin, Texas, there are 128% more people trying to sell their homes than there are buyers willing to purchase them. That is the single largest seller surplus of any major city in America. Not second largest. Number one, drive down South Congress Avenue on a warm Texas evening, and none of that is visible. The restaurants are packed. The live music carries for blocks. The skyline keeps growing. Austin still looks like the boomtown that everyone fought to move to. But here is what they are not telling you. Today we count down the 10 Austin area cities where the housing market is quietly falling apart, from the suburbs that got overbuilt to the neighborhoods closest to downtown that corrected first. And number one, the city with the steepest collapse in the entire metro, may be the one that surprises you most. Subscribe now so you never miss the next housing warning. Drive west out of Austin on the 183 toll road on a clear Texas morning, and Cedar Park opens up exactly the way a suburb is supposed to. Wide streets, good schools, driveways full of SUVs, and the unmistakable calm of a neighborhood that has not yet received bad news. Real estate agents have been calling this one the safest bet in the metro for years. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Cedar Park now sits at 4.8 months of housing supply, officially a buyer's market, according to Neuhaus Realty's 2026 Austin Metro data. And nearly half of all active listings across this metro, 47.8%, have already been marked down at least once. Here is what drove it. The domestic migration pipeline that fed Cedar Park's growth has gone dry. The U.S. Census Bureau reported in February 2026 that Travis County would be recording net population loss right now if not for international arrivals. The buyers who were supposed to keep Cedar Park humming have stopped coming. A growing number of sellers in Cedar Park report listing their homes at what they assumed was a conservative price, and then sitting for 60, 70, 90 days with barely a showing. The 2021 playbook, price it right, watch the offers come in, does not work here anymore. If you bought in Cedar Park in 2022, here is what happened to your money. On paper, values have barely moved up a couple of percent. But you have been carrying a 6 to 7% mortgage for 4 years. That is hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest payments. And your home is worth almost exactly what it cost you the day you signed. If Cedar Park is the safest market in this entire metro, and it still has nearly 5 months of unsold inventory, what does that tell you about everything else on this list? Head north out of Austin on the 183A, and Leander appears the way frontier towns always did fast. A decade ago, this was ranch land. Now it is subdivisions, stacked on subdivisions, schools still being finished, and a commuter rail line connecting it all to downtown. The growth story here sold itself without anyone having to work too hard. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. The domestic migration that built Leander has effectively reversed. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, as reported by Community Impact Austin in February 2026, Travis County's net domestic in-migration hit an all-time low. The engine that powered Leander's explosion is running on fumes. Leander was sold as the solution to Austin's affordability crisis. Move north, get more space, pay less. The problem is that enough people believed it that Leander stopped being cheap. And when remote work ended, when employers called people back, the trade-off of a long commute with a high-rate mortgage stopped making sense for anyone doing the real math. A growing number of Leander homeowners who purchased in 2021 and 2022 report that their neighborhoods are quieter than expected. New subdivisions with streets already paved and utilities already connected are seeing slower move-in rates than projected. The demand that was supposed to arrive is taking its time, or skipping Leander entirely. If you bought in Leander in 2022, here is what happened to your money. Redfin's April 2026 data puts the median sale price at $418,000, down 3.2% year over year. Zillow's independent data tells a starker story. The average home value in Leander has fallen 15.5% over the past year, sitting at $456,956. When two separate Tier 1 data platforms land that far apart on the same market, the honest answer is that nobody fully agrees on how bad it is. What both sources agree on is the direction. You moved to Leander because Austin was too expensive. At what point does Leander become the same problem you were running from? Take State Highway 130 northeast, and Pflugerville shows up without any fanfare, a working-class suburb, with decent highway access, reasonable prices, and the kind of quiet practicality that never made the tech bro relocation listicles. This was never the glamour move. This was supposed to be the smart move. Get in early, build equity, stay ahead of the market. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Community Impact, Austin's April 2026 reporting the median home price in Pflugerville has dropped from $404,848 to $380,000. Sellers here are walking away with nearly $25,000 less than they would have received just 1 year ago. The market now sits at 6.7 months of supply, firmly in buyer's market territory. New construction is flooding the pipeline all along this corridor. Builders who broke ground during the boom are delivering finished inventory right now, and they are discounting to move it, offering rate buydowns, closing cost assistance, free upgrades. Every new home that closes below asking price resets the comparable for every resale seller on the same block. Homeowners trying to sell cannot compete with that without losing money. A growing number of Pflugerville sellers report receiving lowball offers loaded with aggressive concession requests. Buyers asking for rate buydowns, repair credits, and closing cost coverage that would have been laughed out of the room in 2021. The leverage has completely flipped, and sellers are the ones sweating now. If you bought in Pflugerville at the 2022 peak, here is what happened to your money. The median sale price sat above $400,000. Today, it sits at $380,000. According to Community Impact's April 2026 data, that is a $24,848 paper loss for the average seller, and that is before commissions, before closing costs, before the 6 to 7% interest you have been paying every month. Would you accept $25,000 less than you paid just to get out? Drive south on I-35, past Austin's southern edge, and Kyle announces itself with the same visual shorthand as every other Sunbelt boomtown fast food corridors, giving way to subdivision after subdivision, each one with a stone monument sign and a neighborhood name that sounds more expensive than the price tag. Kyle was supposed to be the last affordable door before it closed permanently. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Local Austin market data from June 2026 shows that 55.7% of active listings in Kyle have already had their price cut at least once. More than half of every home currently for sale in this city has been marked down. And the median sale price sits at $299,990, which sounds like a deal until you run the numbers on a 6% mortgage with Texas property taxes. Kyle is drowning in new construction. Builders who raced to meet pandemic-era demand are delivering finished product right now, and they are offering rate buydowns, free appliance packages, and design center credits to close. A private homeowner trying to sell a resale unit in Kyle cannot match what a builder is offering 30 feet away in the next phase of the same subdivision. Not without taking a loss, not without accepting the new reality. A growing number of Kyle resale sellers report the same experience. Buyers walk through the existing home, take photos, then drive 3 blocks to the model home and buy the brand new version with a 2-1 buy down included for the same price. There is simply no competing with that without giving something away. If you bought in Kyle in 2022, here is what happened to your money. Redfin's January 2026 data puts the median sale price at $305,000, down 6.2% year over year. Zillow's data confirms the direction the average home value sits at $341,856, down 9.9% over the past year. At the 2022 peak values across this corridor, we're running significantly above either of those figures. The buyers who came in at the top are not just sitting on softer prices. They are competing to sell against the same builders who drove the market up, and those builders are now discounting to get out. When more than half of the homes for sale in your city have already been marked down, who exactly is the market waiting for? If this is hitting close to home, hit subscribe. We cover these markets every week, so you can stay ahead of what is coming. Round Rock sits just north of Austin on I-35, and it has always had a story that sells itself. Dell Technologies, Apple's campus nearby, Samsung down the road. The kind of employer anchor that was supposed to make a suburb market-proof, rate-proof, correction-proof. Drive through the neighborhoods near the tech corridors, and they still look right. Maintained lawns, good schools, everything that should hold value. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Redfin's April 2026. Data shows Round Rock home prices are down 6% year over year, with a median sale price of $375,000. Zillow's independent data puts the average home value at $412,831, down 4.9% over the past year. Two separate Tier 1 data sources. Same direction. Employment growth in the Austin metro has slowed to historically weak levels, according to Builder Magazine's 2026 reporting. The tech campus anchors that made Round Rock's pitch so easy to sell have not been generating the sustained job creation that a decade of new housing supply was built around. When the job engine slows, the reason to move here weakens. And when the reason to move here weakens, demand softens and inventory climbs. According to Community Impact, Austin's March 2026 report February, data showed a clear and sustained year-over-year decline in Round Rock home prices. The first time in over 5 years, the market had posted consistent losses. Sellers who believe the tech campus story are finding out that proximity to a headquarters is not the same thing as a job guarantee. If you bought in Round Rock in 2022, here is what happened to your money. The median sale price in this market sat in the upper 400s during the peak. Redfin now reports a median of $375,000. For a buyer who purchased at peak with a 20% down payment, the paper loss alone approaches the size of the original down payment before commissions, before carrying costs, before 4 years of interest, at rates that were already climbing when they signed. Dell, Apple, Samsung, the employers that were supposed to make Round Rock bulletproof. So why are home prices down 6%? Drive south from Kyle on I-35 and Buda comes at you quickly. A small hill country town that got swallowed by the Austin migration wave and never stopped growing. Creekside subdivisions, limestone ridge views in the distance. The kind of scenery that gets photographed and posted with a caption like, "We finally got out of the city." This was the move, the smart move, before the math changed. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Two independent data sources tell the same story. Zillow's 2026 data shows the average home value in Buda has fallen 5.8% year over year, sitting at $352,147. Redfin's April 2026 data confirms that median sale price is down 6.2% year over year at $399,000. Two separate platforms, same direction. Same. Buda was one of the fastest growing cities along the I-35 corridor during the pandemic migration wave. The problem with being the fastest growing is that builders noticed. They built. Then they kept building. And now that finished inventory is competing head-to-head against every resale home in the market, while the buyers who were supposed to absorb all of it are showing up in smaller and smaller numbers. A growing number of Buda homeowners report checking their Zillow estimates and finding a number slightly lower than the month before. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just a steady month-by-month erosion that adds up quickly when you look at where it started 2 years ago and where it sits today. If you bought in Buda in 2022, here is what happened to your money. This corridor was running hot during the peak. Homes were regularly closing above $400,000. Zillow now places the average home value at $352,147. For a buyer who came in at the peak, that is a paper loss of roughly $50,000 or more, before commissions, before 4 years of interest. You bought in Buddha to escape the Austin market. But what do you do when Buddha becomes the Austin market? Stand on South Congress Avenue on a warm June evening, and Austin still looks like the promised land it sold itself as. The restaurant lines are long. The live music carries down the street. The cranes are still in the skyline. From the sidewalk, nothing looks broken. That is exactly the problem, because the numbers underneath the surface tell a completely different story. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Redfin's data shows that right now in Austin, there are 128% more sellers than buyers, the single largest seller-to-buyer imbalance of any major city in America. Not second largest, not close to the top. Number 1. And Zillow's April 2026 data puts the average home value at $512,937, down 6.8% over the past year. Austin overbuilt. Active listings inside the city jumped 17.9% year over year, nearly 4 times faster than the broader metro, according to Builder Magazine's 2026 reporting. At the same time, the U.S. Census Bureau confirmed that domestic in-migration to this metro hit an all-time low. Supply went up, demand went down. The result is 128% more people trying to leave than people willing to come in. According to Spectrum News reporting in February 2026, a national study identified Austin as the city with the slowest housing market among the 50 most populous cities in America. Sellers are listing and waiting, waiting and cutting, cutting and waiting longer. The city that could not be slowed down became the city that cannot get started. If you bought in Austin in 2022, here is what happened to your money. According to local market data, the median home peaked at $550,000 in May of 2022. By early 2026, that figure had dropped to approximately $414,950. That is a paper loss of more than $135,000 for anyone who bought at the top, before commissions, before closing costs, before 4 years of carrying a 6 to 7% mortgage. There are 128% more sellers than buyers right now in this city. So whose side is time actually on? Head northwest out of Georgetown on State Highway 29, and Liberty Hill appears at the edge of the Texas Hill Country, like a small town that woke up famous. A decade ago, this was scrubland and cattle ranches. Then, remote workers arrived with Bay Area salaries, and Austin prices suddenly looked cheap. Big lots got subdivided. New builds went up fast. The dream of rural space with a suburban price tag became real for a moment. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Local Austin market data from June 2026 shows that 62.8% of active listings in Liberty Hill have already had their price cut at least once. Nearly 2 out of every 3 homes currently for sale in this city has been marked down. That is the single highest price cut rate in the entire Austin metro area. Liberty Hill got built for a version of Austin that no longer exists. Remote workers with schedule flexibility drove out here for land space and a lower price tag. Those workers are now back in offices back in the core city, and the trade-off of a long commute from the hill country fringe at 6 to 7% mortgage rates stopped making financial sense for anyone doing the real math. The buyers left. The inventory stayed. A growing number of Liberty Hill sellers report setting asking prices that would have been competitive in 2022, and then watching month after month go by without a serious offer. Price reductions of $20,000, $30,000, sometimes $50,000 have not been enough to close the gap between what sellers need and what buyers are willing to pay at current rates. If you bought in Liberty Hill in 2022, here is what happened to your money. According to Zillow's 2026 data, the average home value in Liberty Hill has fallen 8.8% over the past year, sitting at $506,086. That is nearly $45,000 in paper losses from just 1 year of decline. Layer 4 years of 6 to 7% mortgage payments on top of that, and the investment thesis that looked so clean in 2022 has become very difficult to defend. In Liberty Hill, almost 2 out of 3 homes for sale have already cut their price. What does the third one know that the other 2 do not? Walk the streets of central Austin on any given morning, and the city still hums. Coffee shops with lines out the door, food trucks parked on corners, the kind of walkable mixed-use neighborhood that every real estate pitch describes as the heart of the city. Proximity to everything. The last argument standing for why prices should hold when everything else softens. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Redfin's neighborhood data for Central Austin shows the median home price fell 10.6% year over year, the steepest decline of any neighborhood tracked in the Austin metro by that data set. The place closest to downtown, closest to employers, closest to everything buyers were supposed to want, has posted the sharpest correction in the city. That is not a footnote. That is the headline. Central Austin was built on a single premise. Proximity has permanent value. That logic depended on people needing to be physically close to where they worked. Remote work broke that premise. And when the flood of migration that followed ended, the premium people had paid for centrality could not hold at 2022 prices on a 6 to 7% rate environment. Proximity stopped being worth what the market had charged for it. A growing number of Central Austin condo and townhome buyers who purchased in 2021 and 2022 report watching their Redfin estimates drop steadily month after month. They bought into the argument that urban cores are always the last to correct, that downtown proximity is a floor, not a ceiling. They are learning in real time that in this cycle, the urban core corrected first. If you bought in Central Austin in 2022, here is what happened to your money. Redfin's April 2026. Neighborhood data puts the median at $358,000, down 10.6% year over year. A buyer who purchased near the peak of that market is looking at a paper loss that layered on top of 4 years of elevated carrying costs, and closing expenses makes the original investment case nearly impossible to defend with a straight face. If the neighborhood closest to downtown, closest to jobs, closest to everything is down 10%. What does that say about your investment thesis? Drive north from Austin on I-35, and Georgetown rises out of the Texas flatland like a small-town postcard, a Victorian courthouse square heritage oaks lining the streets around it, the kind of civic character you cannot manufacture. For years, this city carried a title, the fastest growing city in Texas. It was not a marketing slogan. The census data backed it up. People came here because they believed the story. The story was real, and then the market rewrote the ending. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Neuhaus Realty, citing Austin Board of Realtors, MLS, data from March 2026, Georgetown recorded a 17.3% year-over-year decline in median home prices, the steepest drop of any city in the Austin metro. Here is the important context. A significant portion of that decline is driven by a surge in entry-level new construction sales, pulling the median lower. But for an existing homeowner in Georgetown trying to sell a resale property, the practical effect is identical. They are now competing directly against brand new homes at lower price points, and they are losing that competition. Local market data also shows that 55% of active listings in Georgetown have already had their asking price cut. Georgetown's growth attracted builders, the way all fast-growing cities do, aggressively and at scale. They delivered. New subdivisions with entry-level pricing came online right as remote work migration reversed, and domestic in-migration to Travis County hit a record low, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Georgetown went from fastest growing to most oversupplied in roughly 24 months. The people who were supposed to fill those homes never arrived in the numbers the building permits had anticipated. According to Builder Magazine's 2026 reporting, builders across the Austin metro are offering rate buydowns, free upgrades, and design center credits to move new inventory. In Georgetown, that means a resale homeowner is not just competing against the house 3 blocks away. They are competing against a developer with a marketing department, a model home open 7 days a week, and the ability to buy down a buyer's mortgage rate for the first 2 years. Individual sellers cannot win that fight on price alone without taking a real loss. If you bought in Georgetown in 2022, here is what happened to your money. Georgetown was running among the hottest markets in Williamson County at the peak. According to local market data, the median has now fallen 17.3% year over year. For a buyer who purchased at the peak with a 20% down payment, the equity erosion has been swift and steady, and the new construction flooding the surrounding market shows no sign of stopping. Georgetown was the fastest growing city in Texas. It now has the steepest home price decline in the Austin metro. At what point does growth become a warning sign? 10 cities, 10 different names, 10 different zip codes spread across one of the most watched housing markets in America. But pull back and look at all of them at once, and the pattern is not subtle. Every single city on this list boomed for the same reason. Remote workers arrived with more money than the local market had ever seen. Builders noticed and broke ground. Investors bought on momentum. And ordinary buyers, afraid of being priced out forever, signed at prices that made no sense unless you assumed the growth would never stop. Here is what nobody said loudly enough. At the time, the people who moved to Austin to escape overcrowded, overpriced cities. They brought the overcrowding and the overpricing with them. And when employers called them back to offices, when the flexibility that justified a Round Rock commute or a Liberty Hill mortgage disappeared, they started to leave. They left the inventory behind. They left the carrying costs behind. And they left the buyers who came in last, holding the most expensive paper in the metro. Austin did not collapse because the economy broke. Austin is correcting because the story that was sold here depended on conditions that no longer exist. Remote work migration, record low rates, unlimited demand from people fleeing coastal cities. All three are gone. From Georgetown to central Austin to Cedar Park, the data is telling the same story in different fonts. 128% more sellers than buyers. 55% of listings already marked down. Foreclosure starts up 150% in a single year. The warning signs were always there. The question is, were you watching? This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial or real estate advice. Always consult a licensed professional before making any investment decisions. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your city in the comments below.